All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another installment of our Sexpert Success webinar series. My guest today is Mr. James Collins, James R. Collins, and James knows firsthand the frustrations of living paycheck to paycheck. And for the past 4 years, he's taught other entrepreneurs like us to strategize and prioritize their finances so that they can bootstrap their business and succeed in the marketplace. James is a certified credit counselor who works one-on-one with his clients, helping them find a level of peace that brings true happiness and fulfillment. Now, you guys know here at Sexpert Consultants, our main mission is to prioritize your pleasure. But as entrepreneurs, I find it fascinating and very encouraging that there is a person here who can teach us how to prioritize our finances, right? And pleasure is not always something that we think about as with finances, but it is often one of the things that leads to the reasons why people separate. Two things you can't talk about in a relationship is pleasure or sex and finances. And so it's important for us as sexuality entrepreneurs to not have that fear. If we don't have a fear of talking about sex, there should be no reason why we should be afraid of talking about our finances. So that's why I got James on today. And we're going to get started. I'm excited to have you here.
Yes, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me. Yes, you do bring up a good point. There's pleasure in being on top of your finances, being able to pay your bills. Right? Yeah, on top of them. Absolutely.
All right. So tell me, that's a good segue into our first question, which is, what are some ways that we entrepreneurs can prioritize our finances?
Okay. Of course, this extends beyond entrepreneurs, right? I mean, anyone or everyone should be able to, get a handle on their finances. One of the first things you want to do is that you want to be able to know your numbers. Okay. My family, they get mad at me a lot because I always run around the house, know your numbers. And I'm just referring to your expenses. And I'm talking about those critical expenses, the things that keep the lights on, keep the roof over your head, clothes on your back, food in your stomach, things like that. The major items. And one of the easiest ways to do that would be to obviously, since everything's electronic now, right? You log into your bank, you look at your transactions, whether it be debit card or credit card. If it's cash, then obviously it's going to be a little tougher to monitor. But if you can pull maybe 3 months of your bank statements, you can either export them to Excel. That's what I like to do. I like to take advantage of the technology. But if you old school and you just want to print off your statements, grab a highlighter and just highlight, at least you're starting somewhere. You can say, look, this is how much I would need if something bad was to happen. Here's how much I would need. So now at least I know a number, and this is how much I need to have at all times. I think that's the best place to start.
There's this really great app that I like to use called Mint. Have you heard of it?
Absolutely.
That kind of helps you do that, right? It helps you pull in your bank statements. They'll connect with your bank. You can kind of sort what your expenses are personally and professionally. I use it for both, all of my accounts, because at the end of the day, you're right. If you don't know what you're spending, I think a lot of people are afraid too, right? Money has a deep wound in us, right?
Oh yeah.
So we don't want to see the number, right? We're running, we're putting we're like flamingos, we're putting our heads in the sand. We don't want to see the number. But then when you see the number, you realize, oh, that's not that bad. That's not that bad. Right?
That's right. That's right. And I think that you definitely nailed it right on the head, because they call it the ostrich effect, where, you bury your head into the ground. And like you said, you'd be surprised. Now, I think what does happen is that a lot of people are shocked, including myself, is that when you say, wait a minute, okay, after I pay all my bills, my utilities, the car insurance, after I pay all of those, I should have X amount left. Mm-hmm. So how come I only have 200 in savings? Mm-hmm. Then you can start highlighting other things. And if you want to get fancy, you can use, different color highlighters, or like you said, most apps, you can even categorize them into certain, dining, eating out, that's usually a big favorite, right?
Mm-hmm. When I saw that, I was like, dang, I didn't even know I had this much money.
Where did it go?
Obviously to dining and eating out. So
Absolutely. No, you're good.
Okay. So once we've done that, right, we've seen like, okay, this is how I'm spending my money, right? I know
Yeah.
my numbers.
Mm-hmm.
How can what are some strategies that we can use to really start or maybe improve the way that we budget our personal and professional finances?
Yeah. Okay. So now that you have a number, you start. I would even say now that you have the mindset that maybe everything isn't as good, or maybe I don't spend, or I'm not as disciplined. So I think just having that recognition right there is going to give you the action steps that you need, the motivation to move forward. You got to be realistic with yourself, though. If you know you're only making X amount of dollars and you've gotten your numbers, if you don't have any wiggle room there, then unfortunately you're going to have to increase your income. Um, the, the book that I wrote, which is available on Amazon, Broke Budgeting, one of the first things I talk about in the very beginning, because I don't want to try to, I guess when you talk about budgeting, it's very restrictive. It seems like I can't spend money. I work hard for it. Why can't I spend it? But I'm talking about the people who overspend, the people who have the extra money left over, but they're just not putting it in a more beneficial place. So I think that once you have that number to say, look, we do have $400 extra. The first thing you want to do is to build up your emergency fund. Now, I'm a big firm believer in just starting with $1,000. You'll hear a lot of people say 2 to 3 months of expenses, 6 months. I think that's great, but the people that I hang out with, they've been trying to save for 2 to 3 months of expenses for the last 15 years.
$1,000 feels like a more attainable savings goal than like, okay, let's see, what's my expenses? We live in one of the most expensive cities in the world. So let's see, let's multiply that by 3. Yeah, no, like I can barely save for a month's worth, right? So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think that that is manageable. So now once you have that, that's almost like another win under your belt. It's always a good idea to have like a little checklist, right? So now you've gotten your statement. You've done an audit on your personal finances. You know your numbers. Okay. You know how much extra cash flow. I don't want to talk too technical yet, but then you start talking about cash flow that you can use to other things. Then you can start talking about where your priorities are, where the bills are. You start looking at debt and credit cards, because not all bills were designed to be paid off early. Some bills were designed that you do carry them for 30 years, like mortgages. Obviously, you want to pay it off sooner if you can, but you also don't want to be house broke either.
Right. Exactly.
So.
Yeah, I think about that a lot. Like, what is the difference between like, okay, putting myself on a very restrictive budget and having a bunch of money in my pocket and like spending on the experiences that bring me pleasure, right? Like, there is a very fine line between like, going after the things that you want and then also putting things away for what you might need a little later, right? And so I think this is the next question I want to ask is like, with this understanding, okay, we should know our numbers and we should, self-awareness is key. A lot of this sounds like the work that we do. I just want to say that, right? Because you got to know yourself, right?
That's right.
Take an inventory of yourself, right? And then you have to like create a plan and a goal, like goals for yourself and for your pleasure. And the same is true for your finances, right? You have to know your finances, know yourself. What are your spending habits, right?
That's right.
As a business and as a person. And then what are your like what are your next steps? Like what are your goals and how do you get to those next steps? I love that. That's a Japanese philosophy called Kaizen, which is like this, you take small changes to make a big step, right?
Okay.
And I want to save $10,000. I do want to save $10,000. But the way that my spending habits are set up, I'm more likely to do that over 10 years, right? Because I can save $1,000 a year. That's nothing, right? That's an easy goal, right? It just, so thinking about it, sometimes our like, in the same way that pleasure, like approaching pleasure feels overwhelming when we think about all of the stuff we have to do and all of the shame and obstacles and guilt we have to like jump over. the same is true. Like it just becomes overwhelming and we don't even
Right.
know where to begin. Like, where do I start?
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
And the same is true for your finances. Like, especially if you've racked up a bit of debt, which this society is really good at helping us do, right?
Absolutely.
So if you've racked up a bit of debt, um, then it's like, oh, we have a whole bunch of shame and guilt around this thing. And now it's overwhelming. And I don't have all of the money to pay for it today. And I can't see where to even begin to get myself out of this thing. Right. And so I think I like this idea of creating just a list, right? What is the thing? What are the things that need to be done?
Yeah.
Um, and then just doing like the one thing, right? Do one
Yeah.
thing on the list. Just try one thing, because that list can be overwhelming in and of itself. Like, oh God, I have to pay this debt and this debt and this debt, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's one of those things where it becomes a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It takes time. If you want the payoff, then you're going to have to put the work in. The cool thing about it to me is that it's more so about discipline. And as you mentioned, if you start doing those little things, if you're walking, just every day to the corner and back for 5 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
just doing those little things,
Mm-hmm.
that might help. Because I remember I had one of my breakthroughs one Friday, because once I started saving, after I got into the 4th or 5th month, then I became addicted to it. Because when the money is growing, it's still not there yet. Then my mind started thinking like, wait a minute, I just hit 1,000. What if I could hit 2,000? Let's just see if I can get there. But I remember one Friday in particular, went out, got some food, came back to my desk, and I went to get a soda. The soda was like $2, but then because I used a debit card or credit card, it was more expensive, like $2.20. So as I was at my desk drinking that soda, I'm like, wait a minute, I could have got a 2 liter. I walked past. Even CVS is more expensive. We know that, but I still could have got a 2 liter for $2.39.
Mm-hmm.
Those little things. I
Yeah.
think that starts to shift. Your perception, your attitude when it comes towards money can definitely change your course.
Oh, so true. So I want to talk a little bit about what you do with entrepreneurs, right?
Mhm.
And this idea of bootstrapping your business. So my question is, all right, for those of you who don't know what bootstrapping is, like, what is bootstrapping for folks who don't know?
Okay, and so I'm glad you asked that, because it's somewhat divided, but the side that I stand on is pretty firm. Is that bootstrapping is when you're using your own personal finances and you're borrowing money from family and friends. The idea of bootstrapping is that you don't go into debt.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's how you run your business, start your business with very little capital.
So tell me, is it a good idea to bootstrap your business with personal credit, like credit cards and things like that?
Yeah, it's tricky, because whether you're bootstrapping your business or just taking care of your personal finances, if you're not disciplined enough with your credit card, just taking care of your personal business, how are you going to bootstrap a business? Um, the idea is that you want to have separation between your personal finances and your business finances, which brings us to another problem or situation.
Okay.
Because you have somebody who they're still learning about being disciplined on that personal side. But then once you add the business credit to it, now you're managing 2 sets of books here. And sometimes it's kind of easy to interchange credit cards and mesh accounts. And that can get complicated when it comes to tax time and things like that. So it takes a certain level of skill and discipline to get to that point.
Yeah.
I, I, okay, I'll say this. If you're able to have discipline to manage your personal credit cards, then let's get you set up on the business side so we can get you some business credit cards that can give you 2, 3, 10 times those credit limits. That way, your business expenses do not show up on your credit profile, your credit report. However, if you are delinquent, you best believe it's going to show up. So it's not, back in the day, you get all these credit cards, you start a record label, right? Run it to the ground and then try to bail out. No, they'll come for you.
Yeah. Yeah, you notice that with these new know your customer laws, there's always a social security number, someone who is like the responsible party
Of course.
that you have to name when you're signing up for any kind of business, like
Mhm.
credit.
Yeah, they call it a PG. You got to personally guarantee. So
Mm,
even though Wedge Concepts LLC, they're like, Mr. Collins, we're going to need you to sign here, and then and on this page, this is where we're going to check your personal credit because we don't know anything about your business.
yeah.
Okay, you just handed us some information, but you bank with us. And if
Yeah.
I can just throw a little nugget in there, it's very important that if you have a bank that has a business side to it, extend that relationship. Talk to your personal banker, make an appointment, set up a business checking or savings account if the money's right, because some banks charge a lot of fees.
Yeah.
So you can go online and do that. But just having that set up with your primary bank, now they can watch and monitor you, but they're going to offer you other services and products that you wouldn't even know existed, and you'll get that great credit line off the break because they see you're handling your business on the personal side. And what they're doing is what they're saying is, look, I don't know again who Wedge Concepts is, but I know James, and James take care of his business on the personal side.
Yeah.
So here go $10,000 on this credit card to get started with. Let me know how the business go, and if you need more, let us
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Come back in 6 months, and
That's so true. Like, so one of our first, like the first loans that we secured was through PayPal's working capital loan. And what I loved about that loan was that, first of all, it was offered to me solely because of the amount of capital that we had brought in at,
okay,
over
mm-hmm.
a period of time. And the way that those loans are structured, um, basically they give you a lump, a sum of money, a small sum, not a like, we're not talking about 30, 40,000, right? We're talking like
Okay,
100,000.
mm-hmm.
And instead of paying a monthly, there is a minimum monthly payment, but instead of paying them monthly, you pay through a percentage of the sales that you make through PayPal.
Okay,
Right.
okay, mm-hmm.
So let's say, and it's up to like 30%, right? Like they won't take more than 30% of your sales. And so you have, their minimum payment is over 90 days, right?
Okay,
So, but the interest rate is a little high, right? Like
okay,
it's
a little.
a little high. It's a little high.
That's a good point. I'm
Uh,
glad you worked that up. Mm-hmm.
but for us, it made a lot of sense, right? Because we have a small operation, right? And so we don't need there's not a whole bunch of overhead because a lot of our stuff is online, right? And
Okay.
so the like the when we talk about cash flow, right? How
Yes.
we have that, look, we all know there's busy season. For us, busy season is February to October, which is a long time. This is a long time, right?
Mm-hmm.
But from October to February, there's a big dip in the revenue stream, right? Like that's holiday season. That's a bad time to have a hockey puck in your revenue stream, right? And
Yeah.
so having first of all, knowing your numbers,
Mm-hmm.
and having an idea of like a forecast of like, okay, I know this is coming, but then also having that backup capital, right? So every fourth quarter we borrow. We're like, all right, we get through that.
I love it.
So
I love it.
but we learned that knee jerk, right? That wasn't a thing that we were like, oh, let's plan for it. No, October rolled around and we were like, the money is gone.
In my office right now.
So that's been an interesting learning practice. And so I share that because I think it's important for us all to to know that like, this is not, I think we get so tied up in like how well our business does and like what that means for success, right? And without really realizing that like some days, some months, some cycles are going to be a little bit more successful than others. But
Yeah.
when you prioritize your finances,
Yeah.
you can make it through in a pleasurable way,
That's
right?
right. Less painful.
Yeah, much less painful. All
That's
right,
right.
so I know I don't have you for a lot longer, but I do. Um,
I
I
feel
do.
like we just scratched the surface. Okay.
Yeah, we did. We did. We just scratched the
Yeah.
surface. I'm gonna have you back, right?
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
sure our consultants will have a bunch of questions for you after this. But I do just want to like, is there anything that you think we missed, or anything you want to promote to our audience about like how they can find out more about you and learn more from you until you come back and teach us more?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have my videos on YouTube
Okay.
where I talk about all things finance, from budgeting to credit, to just some of the psychology behind it, like the purpose of building a personal business relationship with your bank and what that does for your credit. There's like these little nuances that I feel like this information is not being passed down. So yes, I do have a book on Amazon. I have a second book on credit repair that I'm actually finishing up now. I'm going to go ahead and release that within the next, probably maybe next week, if all goes well. Next week. That one is a little more trickier because it's the law involved and the way loopholes and the 609 and how to do things like that. But I feel like that the main takeaway that I get from my approach and using the certification as a credit counselor to provide a holistic approach, because really what I'm doing is I'm trying to just expand upon what you already know, because I feel like people have the basics, but now we're just taking it to another level where we're getting a little more serious about it, because now we're talking about business. And I try to encourage people to manage their personal finances as if they were a CFO. Okay. So great story. Last August, we went out to Houston. I stayed for 4 or 5 days. It was my birthday. I do my own taxes, and I'm using the QuickBooks. This is the first time I'm doing it. Usually I just export, categorize through the whole thing. So I'm going through my travel so I can expense it out. And I noticed that for my Houston trip that my car rental was $800, which costs more than both plane tickets. So as a CFO, I had to call myself into the office and figure out, was this a good use of your finance? I get it was your birthday, James. I get it. But that's another thing, is that because it was a business expense, I was able to expense it in such a way. And of course, we can definitely talk about that. Yeah, but I think that to help create that piece that I try to create, is when you just don't have enough money to last. You may be in a career or have a job that just doesn't pay enough. I mean, that's just common for so many of us.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, and you're not going to find a job. Let's be real. Is this a safe place to talk about
Of
certain
course,
things?
always, yes.
Well, it's going to be difficult to find a job where you're actually paid what you're worth. So having the ability to create an LLC, to go ahead and use other people's money to create cash flow and leverage that, so that you can create something not only for yourself, but for other people and all those around you. Having a credit card and being disciplined with that, if we were to do the math, and I'll try to keep it as simple as possible, but if your monthly bills, if your numbers were $2,000 a month, but you had a $10,000 credit card, your mentality would be, hey, if I'm using my credit card for everything. Now, of course, there's some things you really can't pay with a credit card, but you really can because it's third party things. Of course, we can talk about that too. But for the sake of simplicity, let's just say when you get paid, you keep some cash for emergencies and to pay your mortgage or rent. The rest goes to your credit card. So now with that $2,000 a month, you're still making that. But now if you have a credit card with $10,000 and you're using it like a debit card, now you've given yourself $8,000 as a cushion, just in case. I'm not talking about business. I'm just talking about personal. I'm talking about that one time when your car breaks down, you don't want to spend the money. I get it, but you got to get that fixed. You know what I mean? The expense, and it's gonna be $400.
Yeah.
You don't want to, but at least you can swipe it. And when you get paid, you take that same amount of money and you keep adding it there. I think people run into problems. Actually, I know people run into problems when they have credit cards, but they also want to use cash too.
Yeah.
Now you're overextending yourself.
Yeah.
So that's really where I am. And one last final thing, okay, if you don't mind, and if I talk too long, because I can talk about credit all day. Okay, oh, it's Friday, right? Okay, I think that we put too much pressure on ourselves, and then whenever you're talking about finances, as well as the topics that you talk about, right? It has to be done in a very comfortable environment, and I can talk about finances. I can help you with your finances without looking at any one of your bank statements, without even you telling me what your credit score is. It doesn't matter if the collection is $300 or $3,000. It's still a collection on your report, right?
Yeah.
So I think that, being able to have someone that you can talk to that can actually encourage you and kind of coach you along the way can be challenging for some. But what I've noticed over the last 4 years, hands down, I would say 80%, sisters is on it. Sisters be like, James, show me how to do this. How do I do this?
Yeah.
You got any links for this?
Yeah.
Give me another, let me pick your brain. Whereas, some of my brothers, they kind of like, oh, well, I'm just trying to,
yeah,
live my best life.
Well, one of the things we teach here in our Sexpert success class, right? Our Sexpert success training is like understanding what your business expenses are, right? Understanding how, and preparing for those things, right?
Yeah.
Like, we've done this work. We can tell you like what you're going to pay for your email service and to rent a conference room. And, we can tell you those things and you can prepare, right? You can do the numbers before you even have to start spending. That's not what we did, but this is the thing that you can do, right? And that is a plan, right? So,
that's right.
Man, and the plan, and it's a plan for success at that. So I just want to say thank you so much for your time today. This has been enlightening. I'm sure we will have you back.
Looking forward to it.
And so again, we'll put your website and all of the information that that people can use to reach you, YouTube, Instagram, all of that in the description of this webinar. And then we'll have you back for sure. I think we definitely want to continue the conversation around what it looks like to build a business relationship with your bank. I think people would also be really interested in learning about how to, if we know that we got to know our numbers, then it's probably important for us to do some credit repair work, right? Like see where you are, what does it look like for you to have good personal credit, and how can you use that good personal credit and good discipline to really get your business off the ground and get the capital that you need, because a lot of us lack access to capital, right? But we also lack access to the knowledge of the rules that give us access to the capital, right?
Of course.
And so understanding credit, both personal credit and business credit, are going to be something that I definitely am going to tap you for too. So
I'm looking forward to that. And just one last thing is that, the process can take some time, right? But usually within a year, you can see some dramatic changes.
Yeah.
As long as, saying you get focused, you get serious, you get the right resources, you get the tools. And it's always good if you have a partner or a friend or someone who's also encouraging you, somebody who you can talk to as you're going through this, because things start to move really fast, especially once you get access to the business credit, even though you have the ability to spend it, is this money, because, you have good debt and bad debt, but is this debt that I'm getting ready to get into on the business side, is it going to generate income for me, some kind of revenue?
Right.
So then that's a whole nother topic.
Whole nother conversation. Yeah. No, I can't wait. I think this is, I'm so glad that we have you kind of in our corner to give us some advice. And we will definitely have you back. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.